Hello there, welcome to r/askreddit, where we go to Reddit and they ask questions and we read the answers Reddit provides. Today the question is, what screwed you up for the rest of your life? Now, topic warning, there's mentions of death and stuff that could trigger you in here, so if you don't like that, click off now. Now, without further ado, please like and subscribe, leave a little comment below with your thoughts on the stories, and let's get started, shall we? When I was 9, I saw a classmate of mine get hit and killed by a car. First day of my 5th grade year, her dad was dropping her off. He saw it happen too. There's never a day that goes by that I don't think about it. It has been 44 years since it happened. Burning alive in a house fire. The burn ward was the worst part. Half my body is skin grafts. My brother and sister-in-law's death. My wife and I were babysitting their 4-month-old twins, and we get a call that there had been a terrible accident. Go to the hospital, and my brother was dead at the scene, and my sister-in-law was hanging on by a thread. She passed about 10 minutes after I got to the hospital. They were killed by a drunk driver running a stoplight. Luckily, we were able to adopt the twins, and they're turning 5 in 2 weeks. I'm still broken up about my siblings, though, and I don't think it will ever get better. I was on my way to work when I saw a motorcycle accident. It was right before dawn and you couldn't see very clearly. You only had headlights of cars passing by. I knelt next to a guy on his back and could smell blood. I looked down to see his right leg detached from his body, from the middle of the shin down. It looked like a chicken leg that was snapped in half. I wrapped my belt above his knee and tried to keep him conscious until EMS arrived. When the sun started coming up, that's when I noticed his calf muscle inches away from my knee and the amount of blood on my clothes. I decided to ride the EMS to the hospital a city over. I left my car, keys, cigarettes, and phone on the side of the road. A cop moved my vehicle to the shoulder. It took me almost a year to finally eat chicken again. I'll never forget when he looked at me and asked if he was going to die. I told him, "Fuck no, I won't let you." I'll never forget the sound his foot made when it fell off the gurney onto the metal ambulance floor. The guy made a full recovery. I visited him every day in the hospital after the accident. He had 6 blood transfusions and 2 surgeries. He lost his leg from the knee down, but now has a prosthetic leg. He's home with his 2 kids and fiancée. We talk regularly, even now. Edit to add. This was last year in June. I am a U.S. Army military police veteran. It was thanks to my training while in the military. I was able to keep a cool head and do what I did. The police investigation found that he was hit at 90 miles per hour. The driver didn't stop, but a bystander got his license plate, and he was brought to justice. A friend came over to hang out. We got bored and decided to go to his place because he just got the new Xbox 360 for Christmas. His father must have heard us come in because 5 minutes later, there was a very large bang from his parents' room. So I got to see what the head looks like after a 12 gauge goes off at point blank. Pretty rough for a 12-year-old. My poor friend had to stop going to school because of it. My dad was having a psychotic episode when I was 19. He was a wonderful father and a very low-key guy. For a month or 2 beforehand, he had been uncharacteristically animated and had shouted at my mother. I can't recall, but I believe by that point he had already been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but wasn't taking his medication. Around midnight, he rolled in one night, just as I was starting to fall asleep. I heard him shouting at my mother downstairs, and I made my way to the bedroom door. Then I heard my mother scream and I bolted down the stairs. He had her pinned against the back door. He was definitely drunk, which was extremely unusual for him. I threw him off my mother and shouted at him to get back upstairs, and he started saying a bunch of shitty stuff to me. My mom called his psychiatrist, who told her to call the police and ambulance. Before they arrived, my dad came back downstairs and sprinted at my mother again, trying to attack her. I threw him to the ground and wrestled him. Eventually, the cops got there, at which point he had gone back upstairs. When they walked in his bedroom door, he was catatonic. They took him to the ambulance and rode with him to the hospital. The on-call doctor put him on an involuntarily hold because he indicated that he would be in danger to himself or others. He ended up spending a month in psychiatric facility, and they got him on the proper medication. He came back home and apologized to me and told me he didn't remember much about what happened, and not knowing why. He told me he loved me and thanked me for protecting my mother. He never had another psychotic episode after that, but he was never the same again. His health over the past 20 years has deteriorated steadily. He now has type 2 diabetes, heart disease, Parkinson's, and dementia. He can't speak in full sentences anymore, or really respond at all. He's also completely immobile at this point. I don't remember the last time he was really the father I grew up with. There are several things. The one I'll share is my uncle's suicide. He was like a second father to me, unmarried and no kids of his own. My godfather, me, and my dad found him in his house. We had to break in the back door after he'd been missing for days. The neighbors told us he called to them to say he was going away on a course, and he never left the house again. My dad wouldn't let me go upstairs when we broke in, so I just had to stand in the kitchen and listen to his reaction of finding his brother hanging from the attic. It was 2016. I was 30. My dad may as well have died that day as well. He's a completely different man. I sometimes still hear my dad's screams when I try to sleep. I now regret typing this because it's brought back a bit, but I'm posting it anyways because, well, it's already written. Oof. When I was a kid, I had to do some research on my dad's computer. When I got to Google, I typed in D, and it displayed the search history, and it was divorce, neither parent wants kid. You would think that would be the hardest part, but in actuality, the hardest part was pretending like everything was okay, when I knew I wasn't wanted. I must have been, 11? Maybe 12. Watching my mother lose her battle to cancer over a span of 4 years, then being in the room when she took her final breath, I will never be the same. My dad dropped me off at the side of the road when I was 15. He was, quote-unquote, nice enough to help me carry all of my belongings over the railroad tracks and hide them in the cornfield before hopping in his van and driving off though. 45 years later, I'm finally starting to be able to trust other people. My mom died of cancer when I was 14. She tried to die at home naturally. That was not a good idea. I remember her saying she needed a pee, and I was the only one home. I tried to carry her to the toilet, but I fell and her jaw hit the sink. I felt so horribly bad and like a failure. I'm still not over that moment, and I'm 56 now. Okay, you weren't a failure. You were doing the best you could. I hope you can have compassion now for that 14-year-old child who was put in that position years ago. That was a lot for an adult to handle, never mind a child. Inner child work with a trauma therapist can be helpful. I speak from experience. You experienced trauma. The suicide of my boyfriend. We were together 5 years. He was the love of my life. After it happened, I had a psychotic breakdown. Spent time in 3 different mental homes. Burned through all the money I'd saved on drugs and generally ruined my life. This was about 4 years ago, and I am only now just recovering, but will probably carry the damage emotionally and financially with me for the rest of my life. My father was killed by religious extremists. That changed my life completely. Hiding from them, escaping, taking political asylum. The authority left his body outside for 18 hours. It was summer. After seeing his body, it changed me. I had begged to see the hospital for post-mortem. I had to deal with those things alone, but none of my relatives helped us. I don't know, but I can't believe after all that, I'm still breathing. It hurts so much, I can't even explain. Losing my best friend to a car accident. After I was just with him, we were only 17. Man, I can't even talk or think about it too much without silent crying my eyes out. It's hard to even type this. I was naughtily assaulted by the age of 7 to 9 years by a POS who pretended to be a friend, only to abuse and threaten me and hold it like a trophy over me. My childhood was smashed and I tried to put it back like a puzzle. I thought though I was missing a lot of pieces. Man, the years of 78 to 80 were screwed up. Being naughtily assaulted by my babysitter's son. Fast forward 20 years, my best friends, which are no longer, is engaged to one of them after matching on a dating site. She told me not to ruin her happiness. That's not your best friend anymore. Not if she's gonna invalidate what happened to you like that for her own happiness. Drove past a homeless guy with his doggo, a fully grown lab. He was panhandling in the median of a busy street. 10 minutes later, going the other way, passed him again. But this time he was jumping up and down, crying, screaming at the dog, telling it to get out of the street. It had just been hit by a car, and all 4 of its legs were broken. I'll be damned if it wasn't trying to still be a good boy, though. It makes me cry. I was watching my wife give birth to our son, and then watching him slowly die in her arms. I don't know if I'll ever recover from that. My father beat the crap out of my mom, threw her in a deep freezer while she was alive, and then threw my parents' roommate into the fridge, knocking her out. The cops got called and there was a brawl in the living room. Worst of all was when the fricker came home drunk and smashed the TV and VHS player that had my only copy of Land Before Time before he started his rampage. I was only 4. My mom ended up being fine and got out after that, but I still have weird dreams about that night. Father passed away alone, covered in his own piss and shit in 2015. I wish I could have seen him off myself. As in, taking care of him. Loving someone with severe mental illness. It changed not only me, but how I relate to everyone. It also taught me that saying "you should" or anything like that is not okay. You don't know how others should handle things. I now ask people if they want my advice, and if they say yes, I still word it like "in this situation" or "I think I might do," because you literally don't know how you'll react to things and people until you are in the moment. I got engaged a year back. I was going to wait to tell my parents as I was due to fly my parents' home state the next day because I was attending my best friend's wedding, which I was very excited for. I opted to FaceTime them anyways and share the good news. They had no knowledge of the engagement prior, and they were ecstatic. They took my call while they were in the car, on their way to visit their best friend on a short weekend vacation, and they let me know they would celebrate with me in 2 days when they returned back to their home state. For context, I had not spoken to my dad for a few months after a big argument, but talking to him on the phone was such a refreshing experience, and we were really excited to see each other and reconnect. I felt like I had gotten to a point where we could grow past our differences, and I could apologize for blowing up at him. While I was on the flight, something told me to just buy the Wi-Fi. It was a 3-hour flight, and I usually don't buy Wi-Fi for rides that short, but I did around halfway in. When it connected, I began to receive about 50 messages in my family group chat, each filtering in every few seconds. The first one was my mom informing us that my dad had been in an accident. They were currently doing CPR on him while waiting for an ambulance. Everything happened very fast, and I had no clue the timing of anything or his current status. I had to go to the bathroom of the airplane and hyperventilate for the next 20 minutes. That feeling is unreal, like total denial and just trying to focus on staying conscious. I knew deep down that he wasn't going to make it, and I was alone on this plane, trapped with the reality of the situation. I was basically just having a silent panic attack until I landed and got off the plane. My best friend, who was getting married the next morning, came to get me. She sat with me as I processed that. It was ugly, but I was lucky to have her, even though it should have really been excited for her wedding. There was a short second where we thought he would make it, but they discovered after a while that he had no chance due to the amount of time he had no oxygen. I had to say goodbye on the phone to my comatose father while he was in another state. He died an hour later while I was on the phone with my family. I had to call his sisters and let them know that he had passed, which was the hardest part of that night. Everything felt like it happened in a matter of a few hours. After the funeral, my mom proceeded to show me footage that our friend decided to take the hour before he passed. He was playing a game of pool with his best friends, laughing, joking, just being so true to him. It's eerie, but moving to see how happy he was, even until his last day. The video was an hour long. After pool, they opted to go and kayak. The story is that him and my brother went on the water with 2 of our close family friends. It seems like my dad had forgotten something, and he told them to go on without him and he would catch up. My brother is nonverbal and cannot swim and was in the kayak with him with a life vest on, thankfully. Apparently it seems like my dad had forgotten. We think he took off his vest to go back on the dock, and in that first 10 minutes they were gone. He had a heart problem, fell in the water unconscious. My brother had also fallen from the boat and was watching this happen. We were lucky he had a jacket on because our family friends came back to see him in the water alive. My dad was definitely gone. They managed to get a pulse, but he passed in the ICU. It was very shocking to everyone. He was a naturally really good swimmer. He used to be on the diving team. He had boated many times before. In my opinion, the worst part was my brother, who had to watch the traumatizing event. Easily could have also died. More so, he will never be able to tell us what really happened. If I had not called him the day before and waited to tell him the news about my engagement, he would have never known. In the next few months, we also had a trip planned to go back to his home country so he could reconnect with his roots, which he had been looking forward to for years. I carry a lot of guilt and sadness from his passing. So many other weird circumstances around it as well, but he was doing something he loved with his favorite people in the world. He had done so much with his life. I have learned to let go of that burden, but I would give anything for another day with him. We ended up taking the trip anyways and buried a piece of his memory on a mountain overlooking his mother village. I also have had a near-death experience with water, so the difference is now, unless it's a pool, I don't go in oceans farther than my waist. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the stories, and I will see you next time. Hasta la pasta.